Adam Creek. Had the chance, just about a month and a half ago, to first meet Adam. CWF, as it usually does, comes up with incredible opportunities for people. And for their Learning Institute fellows, that's no exception. So we were invited one afternoon, which of course then stretched into evening with meetings and all the rest of it, to go rowing with Adam Creek. And I went, oh, hold it. We're talking Olympic gold medalist rower. And I'm thinking everything from sculling on through, and I'm going, okay, for people like Wade and I that were willing to step forward and say, okay, we'll do that. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a rough start. And so we're waiting for Adam. For those that have been to Victoria, you might know a place called the Canoe Club. Some people think of it as a nightclub, restaurant, etc. Adam uses it as sort of a stopover on the way down to his boat when he goes out rowing to check his crab traps. So in comes this gentleman with a crab trap, with 2 crabs in it, plunks it onto the table. These other people are sitting there wide-eyed, and Adam comes, hi, I'm Adam. And is patient enough to take 2 slightly out of shape gentlemen out and introduce them to rowing in the harbor. That is my first introduction to Adam, but it doesn't even touch the surface of what you're going to be dealing with Adam Creek.
Adam Creek is a self-described positive realist. He's an Olympic and world champion rower and was named Athlete Leader of the Year at the 2010 Canadian Sports Awards. He's an ambassador for the Robert Bateman Get to Know program, an organization that connects hundreds of thousands of young people with nature through direct, hands-on, and cutting-edge educational initiatives. He recently circumnavigated Vancouver Island with his 4-man team in record-breaking time. Adam will now row across the Atlantic Ocean in December 2012 to advocate for health and wellness and to raise funds for Right to Play.
I'm pleased to invite up Adam Creek.
Thank you very much, Rick. And it was a special day when I went out with Rick and Wade and on the waters outside of Victoria on the outer harbor. It's absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. The stars were out, and we really got to connect with nature. We really got to connect with what is special and what we're actually trying to protect, because I find so many of us work so hard to actually protect these water resources, but we don't actually get out there and enjoy them. And I believe that getting out there and enjoying the water resources as individuals, as humans, is just as important as protecting them. And I came to this epiphany when I was training for my first Olympic Games. I was off on Elk Lake, and we had just finished a particularly grueling workout training for the Olympics. It was, we had done battle on the water, and like most battles, we finished, and I didn't really realize, I didn't really know if I had won, I didn't really know if I had lost, and I was physically exhausted, I was emotionally exhausted, and I was empty. And most of us know that when we are empty and we are exhausted, that's the time when, when inspiration strikes. And inspiration came in the form of a teammate who came up to me afterwards, and he said, Adam, isn't it incredible where we get to train? And I looked back at him, and I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, isn't it incredible? We train under these Douglas fir trees underneath these mountains on Elk Lake in Victoria. We've got eagles above us. We've got flocks of coots who follow us around. There are fans. They're screaming and chirping as we row down the lake. And we get to spend time with them every single day. And it was at that point in time a light went off in my head. And there was a neuron, actually, that fired. This neuron fired. This is the neuron that held all my concept of conservation, all my concept of wildlife, all my concept of why the natural world was important. And then a giant synapse ended up connecting right across my brain to another neuron, which held all my ideas of rowing, of sport, of being outside, of being active. It was at that point in time that I recognized there is a connection between there's a connection between sport, there's a connection between being outside, and there's a connection between wanting to preserve and protect the natural environment. And there's an interesting interaction when you do go and you compete. When you do compete for sport. I'm just going to move my notes along here. And when you're competing for sport and you're competing for the Olympic Games, it's probably one of the most selfish experiences that you can undergo. Because really what you're doing is you're trying to maximize yourself. You're just trying to see, how can I make myself the fastest person in the world? And then when you start working, you move to the high level, and if you're in a team sport and you're lucky enough to interact with other people, and you actually realize that, okay, I have to work with other people to make that happen. But being in an outdoor sport and being connected to nature in such a regular way, it was such an eye-opening experience, and it was something that really compelled me. And myself as an individual, I was never really a born environmentalist. I was never someone who was born who really wanted to, who had that inborn passion to protect the world. But I ended up growing into that. And I ended up growing into a person who wanted to conserve. I was growing into a person who wanted to protect. And I grew into that person who wanted to conserve and protect by having that connection, connecting that one neuron through the synaptic pathway of environmental conservation, environmental responsibility, to my love of outdoors and to that love of the sport. And that wasn't always, the way. And I remember when I was a really young kid, I was in grade 3, and I was an incredible troublemaker. I remember one time, I decided I was going to sneak out of class. We were in this large classroom. I snuck out of class, and I ended up stealing all the shoes from the classroom. I ended up filling them up. I pulled out my shirt. I jam-packed all these shoes into my shirt, and I went outside. And I decided I was going to take these shoes, and I was going to throw them on the roof. So I started throwing all these shoes on the roof, and then I ended up getting back into the classroom, and nobody noticed I was gone until the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I realized that I'd caused a big trouble when, some little girls started crying, and then teachers showed up, or parents showed up to bring their kids home, and they ended up just, they ended up getting angry and having to wait for the janitor to come to the roof and take all the shoes off the roof. And really, when I look back on that experience, I see a serious lack in my education as a child. I see a child who is forced to sit in a desk, inside, indoors. A child who is punished, for bad behavior by being told to sit in a chair, by being said, you can't play recess if you misbehave. You can't play gym class if you misbehave. Concepts that I think should be completely abolished, ideas that are completely abolished. I was a young boy with lots of energy. I needed to be outside. I needed to be active. And in fact, Richard Louv, and I put that up on the screen too, Richard Louv wrote a book back in 2005, Last Child in the Woods. And he coined this term nature deficit disorder. And for those of you familiar with attention deficit disorder, with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, I think you can understand where that's going. Because I'm a firm believer that if I was outside, I would have been in a lot less trouble. And there's a lot of research that has come out really illustrating what happens when kids go outside. Kids become more engaged. Kids become smarter. Kids become happier. Kids grow up to become that next generation who will care for our planet even better than we were able to in our generation. And that's really what we're aiming to do, and that's what what our goal is. We want to get more kids outside. And it's important to do this because our next generation matters, and really that's what we're doing it for. And really really what I believe in, and the concept that I really do believe in, is adventure. And I really believe that we all need more adventure in our lives. And we need to challenge ourselves, and adventure can show up in many, many different ways. Adventure can show up in our walk to work in the morning. Adventure can show up in whenever we leave our house. Adventure can show up when we have a break at work, when we have a break of time, when we need to pause and we need to reflect. And adventure is actually really important in our human condition. And it's important in our human condition because we've actually evolved to need adventure in our life. And a number of scientists have actually found this part of the human brain called the ventral striatum. And the ventral striatum is actually enacted, and it releases dopamine, serotonin, epinephrines whenever we do go on an adventure, whenever we have that adventurous experience, whenever we're trying something new that gives us that slight rush, right? That slight rush of fear. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I have faith. I have faith, and I believe that it will work out in the end. And really, that's what I'm talking about with adventure. You know, adventure helps build faith. Adventure helps build hope. Because when we have adventure in our life, we learn how to push through those hard times. We learn how to push through those risky times and move to a point when the world is better. And adventure, the way that I believe it, is, you know, has five components that are incredibly necessary. You must include other people in your adventure. Because as individuals, we don't have strength. And that's something I learned time and time again as an athlete and now as a business person. You cannot do anything alone. And the stronger your teams are, the stronger your experience will be. And so if you have an adventure, you must include other people. And that moves on to the second point, which is you need to go somewhere new or try something new. And that needs to be risky. It needs to bring that element of rush. It needs to engage your ventral striatum. And when you do go on this adventure, though, you can't just go haphazard and say, I'm going to have an adventure, and I'm going to go out tomorrow, and I'm decided that I'm going to go ski to the North Pole. You can't do that. You have to plan. You have to pick the weather windows. You have to make sure that you don't die. Because that really ties into, you know, points 4 and 5, which are you need to learn something and you need to record your story. And the reason why you need to learn something and record your story is so that when you do go on your adventure, that you can actually share it with other people and you can influence the way that other people are thinking. Because really what we're trying to do is illustrate that link. That it's important that we not only care for ourselves, but we also care for other people, that we also care for the environment. And that's really an overview of, you know, of the philosophy that has really driven myself and my teammates to row across the Atlantic Ocean in this December in 2012. But before I get into that, I thought I'd touch on a little bit of my history as an Olympian and as an Olympic gold medalist. And I brought a video to really show you what it was like to train for the Olympics. And while you're watching this, I want you to think, you know, these guys spend all day, every day, when you're training at this high level for a sport like rowing, outside, outdoors, on the water. And, you know, just try and think about what that does to the individual. I was talking to Sasha as well. Sasha is a researcher, and he gives out policy and advises on policy all around the world on water resources. He's an old rower, and he connected to the environment because he was an old rower, I believe. So here's a video of our Olympic experience and what it was like training.
It's really amazing the amount of pain these guys can go through.
Your mind's saying, let's stop, let's stop, let's stop. You've got to train yourself to always break through that.
Success in rowing is based on the amount of work you put in. The more time you spend training, the more hours you spend in a boat, on an erg, with your heart rate accelerated, the more successful you're going to be.
In the underground, what we are able to do is create an environment where the guys can sit on the machines and produce power. When you're on the water, there's a lot of other factors. The boat can be unbalanced, could be a little bit of a side wind, but when you're on a rowing machine, there's nothing preventing it. The thing is stable, you've got the monitor in front of you, so you're just driving that thing as hard as you can.
screen there that tells you exactly how hard you're pulling. And you can't hide. You can't pretend to pull hard. It doesn't matter what face you make. The screen doesn't lie. Rowing is not a screen sport. It's not a sport of gentlemen. Period. Rowing is a pain contest. And there are very few gentlemen that are willing to endure it.
And I'm looking into their eyes, and I see their eyes roll back in their head. And I have to call that guy's name to bring him back, and he focuses back in on me. It's pretty unbelievable that you look at the oar, and they still got full power.
When you go through like, you know, a really grueling hard workout, you feel, you know, you're tired. You're like, man, I really just made myself better. I went out there, I'm a little faster now, you know, I'm a little stronger now.
But at the end of the day, the amount of pain they go through is excruciating, and until you've done it, you can't even conceptualize. I've seen it in front of my face. I still don't understand it. I still don't understand how they're able to do it and still be focused so technically on their rowing.
You don't have a choice, and every practice you don't have a choice, really. If you want to win, and we all want to win.
When it's an Olympic final, people will do things and will sum up an awful amount of courage and strength that you may previously have underestimated them on.
It's a head game at this level. It's a measure of who can sit in the pain the longest and push in it the longest. It's going to take a lot of suffering.
I think it's probably going to take about 8 stretchers, and they're going to all have to be at the finish line because these guys are willing to go that far.
And it's a lot of work to be an athlete, and it's a lot of work to be a high-performance athlete. And I'm a firm believer in the Olympic movement, and I'm a firm believer in sport, but I'm also a firm believer that the Olympic movement in sport and the power that is engaged through sport can be harnessed. And it can be harnessed to engage a conservation ethos in people, across generations, across cultures, because the Olympic movement is one of the few times when people actually get together and don't talk about their problems, right? Think about it. Everyone gets together on forums all the time and talks about our problems. And as there's very few times when people across cultures and across geographies get together and just celebrate. And if we can get together and celebrate not just sport, but celebrate our planet and celebrate our natural environment, along with our sports, I think the world will be a better place. And I see with the Olympic movement, myself, now that I've been a retired athlete, and now that I sit on the board of directors of the Canadian Olympic Committee, there is a sense of environmentalism that does move throughout the Olympic movement. If you look at the 2010 Olympics, of all the issues that were raised, it was in fact the most environmentally responsible and environmentally conscious Olympic Games that were out there. 2012 Olympic Games in London, again, is also pushing the boundaries of how a large organization, a large operation can operate in a responsible way. And it pushes the boundaries. It pushes the boundaries of organizational policy, and it pushes the boundaries of what people believe they can accomplish in their own organizations, whether it be corporations, whether it be governments, whether it be academic or institutional. And when you are training for the Olympics, and getting back to the point of how sport can inspire a better world and inspire a better conservation ethos, you're spending 6 days a week, 50 weeks a year on the water, outdoors. And not only are you learning a work ethic that will help you get things done in the future, whatever you choose to do, you're also creating an incredible bond and a care, because we will protect what we know and love. I think that's a solid fact. What we know and we love, we will protect. And so if you're training for the Olympics, you wake up at around 5:30 a.m. in the morning, you put on your spandex. I know you guys wish you were wearing your spandex today. Make yourself a giant protein shake, go down to the water around 7:15, do your pre-water exercises, get on the water at around 7:30, row from 7:30 till 9:30 or 10, get off the water, eat a giant breakfast, then you go to the chiropractor, physiotherapist, put your body back together, then you get on the water again from about 12 till 12:30, and after that you eat some more food, and then you sleep for a little bit, wake up, go to the gym, lift some weights, get a little bit huge, and go sit on the rowing machines, eat some more food, and then if you have time, you hang out with with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your online friends, hello online friends, and eat some more food, and then if it's a wild and crazy night, then you go to bed at maybe 9:30, and you start it again. And it's, and if we think about it, there's a lot of time that we are spending on the water. And we learn a lot about ourselves, and we go into that depth a lot. We go into that depth of pain, that depth of self-questioning and self-doubt, and we're looking for hope. And when you're looking for hope and you're out in nature, that's when you have those epiphanies of why you're connected. That's where those synapses connect. That's where those synapses connected for me, and I believe that we can facilitate that connection, by instilling a message out there, right? Get to know where you're training, get to know where you are, and figure out how you can protect that and conserve it for the next generation. And I went to the Olympics in 2004, and I lost, and it was awful. We got some Americans in the room. You got some people from America? Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks. And then went to the Olympics, and I won. And that's my Olympic story in a nutshell. And I brought with me my Olympic gold medal, and it's a pretty special. It's a pretty special piece of jewelry, I suppose, and on it you'll see a beautiful angel, and her name is Nike, goddess of victory. She holds in her hand the pen of justice, because the only way you can truly be victorious is if you win by just and honest means. And in fact, Nike was invented by the Greeks thousands of years ago, and she's been on every single Olympic medal since 1896, when Jean-Paul de Coubertin founded the Olympic movement. And then in the 1970s, she founded a sports marketing company. She's done pretty well for herself. So I thought I'd push that around and give you a chance to look at the medal, and also just think about how sport, and outdoor sport in particular, can really inspire an ethos of environmental conservationalism. Because I'll tell you from my own personal experience dealing with rowers. I remember I went to a rowing AGM just a while ago, and we were speaking to Rowing Canada, and I was talking to a number of different people, and it blew my mind. We had one guy who ran a fishing lodge, another guy who was a scientist, another guy who was working in academia, and all these different people, and another one who was a chemist, an environmental chemist. And I was blown away by the amount of people who came through rowing and were actually working to protect the environment. And then it makes sense. It makes sense. And so the question is, how can we continue to promote this? Because if we don't promote this, then the connections aren't made. And when the connections are not made, we end up going down what I call the way of sadness, where we eat crap, we're always sitting, we have shallow relationships, we're disconnected, and we're a stranger to nature. And really, what I'm promoting is a healthier way. A healthier way where we're eating healthier, we're living an active lifestyle, we're living meaningful relationships, we're connected to society, and we are engaged with nature. Because there is a firm relationship between human health and environmental health. And if anything that my experience has taught me is that that is so, right? If you're eating crap food, you know what's happening? You're also killing the planet. If you're eating organic food, what's happening, right? It's not only healthier for your body, it's not only giving you the nourishment you need, you're also actually protecting the planet that we live on. And there is that interaction, there is that relationship, right? And if we're being active and if we're being outside, we are being healthier. We have more of the ability to actually do the work that we care about, right? And we have more ability to engage. I believe, if we are healthier as individuals, and we're healthier as society and healthy as humanity, then we'll actually be able to create a healthier planet. And seeing as I'm talking a little bit about health, I'm going to invite everybody to stand up for a bit. And we're just going to move a bit. So I just want you to start kind of bouncing, like you're going to bounce, bounce. Yeah, there we go. We're going to go through a little exercise right now. We're just going to mix it up. You're going to start shaking your hands like this. You're going to shake them in front of your belt buckle. It was taught to me by this old Asian man. He told me it's a great way to increase your chi. So move it up in front of your stomach now. And you know, he said that if you did this 20 minutes a day for 20 days, you'd lose 20 pounds. I don't know if that's true. Move it up in front of your stomach. Oh, it's a good way to wake up in the morning. Online people, I hope you're doing this too. In front of your heart. In front of your neck. Overhead. Woo. Okay. Good job, everybody. Oh, and there's a beauty in exercise, and I'll just throw it in there. I'm a big fan of this one researcher, Dr. John Rady, out of Harvard, and he studies serotonin, epinephrine, and the connective pathways in the brain. And he's actually found that exercise makes you smarter. And so if you're feeling like you're stuck, if you're working at your desk and you need to get a new idea, go outside, go into nature, go for a walk, a run, a bike, something, or get on the water, go for a row, and I'm sure you'll find that those synapses will fire for you and they will connect. And you'll be able to create bigger, better ideas. And some of the ideas that I wanted to share with you about conservation is I've got 10 ideas that I put out there that maybe we can incorporate into our lives, into our careers, into what we're doing as people who care about water resources on this planet. And the first one is really just adventure outdoors. Get outside and encourage other people to adventure outdoors, because the more time the more people we get outdoors, the better we can be. The next concept is one more of psychology. It's really focusing on what we can control. You know, so often in the environmental movement, we think about the problems and we think about what's holding us back and we think about, you know, the world that is dying, but really there's only so much that we can do as individuals. And if we focus on what we can control and what we're actually doing to contribute to the solution on a regular basis, we'll have more power and we'll have more energy to actually do what we do and make a real difference. Another thing we need to do is be exposed to new perspectives regularly. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm coming in as an athlete and adventurer speaking at this water conference, because I can bring a different perspective to the conversation. Next way is to really just think of the way we want to live. I think of Amory Lovins and when he wrote the book Natural Capitalism. And he talks about, I picture a world where cars run on clean energy and their only exhaust is water and oxygen. You know, I picture a world where energy costs are super low. And he paints this picture that is so inspiring that we all want to, that we want to move towards. And if we can think it, if we can picture it, and we can believe it, we can do it. And that kind of leads into the next point, is that we need to surround ourselves with successful and inspirational people. You know, and if you're surrounded by people that are bumming you out and bringing you down, find at least one new friend. Because I'm a firm believer that we all, on a deeper level, on a more spiritual level, we're all connected. We're all connected in some sort of way. And we become very connected to the people that we are closest with. And we start to really take pieces of each other's spirit and pull it out in the world. And so if we can find other people who have pieces of spirit that we want to incorporate in our being, we just need to spend more time with them, and we'll take it. Next idea is just put a map up. Put a map up in your house, in your school, in your office. Put maps up. And when people look at maps, they're inspired. They look and they say, I picture myself there. I picture myself there. I picture myself there. And they go out, they explore, and they actually connect with the world. Which leads me to the next point, is we need to experience the world firsthand. And we can't just sit in front of our computers, we can't just sit in front of our books. We actually have to do real things in the real world if we're going to have real solutions. I'm a big believer in art. And this has been a more recent realization, but art can really remind us of that power of nature. And art can really capture and connect to us that unspoken. And we can look at pictures, but if you see an art piece that is powerful and actually connects you to that emotion, to that feeling that you felt one time long ago, then it will keep your motivation high and will keep you moving. Another thing we need to do is acknowledge how far we've come. You know, we are more connected than we have ever been in the past as a human species, and we understand more about this planet than we have ever understood before. And we live a more comfortable life than we've ever lived before. And the world continues to move forward, and there's so many good things that have happened in this planet, and really it's our responsibility to build on those good things, to make them better and make the world better. And that's really what we're doing here today. And the final thing to remember is that we're in this together. You know, we are all part of something that's, you know, that's global, and we're not doing it alone. And I'll get to, I guess, my first point of adventure, in that, you know, adventure is really a state of mind. And it's a state of mind that allows us to push through the challenges we face. You know, and the challenges that we face with water is a giant, adventure. And what we're doing when we rowed around Vancouver Island, and what we're doing later this year when we row across the Atlantic Ocean, is we'll have 4 to 5 guys on a 29-foot ocean rowing boat. 4 to 5 guys on a 29-foot ocean rowing boat. And we are connected to nature, but I really just wanted to, to illustrate to you guys what it was like to actually be on that rowing boat. So I'm going to need 4 people to come help me out up here. I just need 4 people. How about you, and you, and you, and you? I know your game, and you. Yeah, come on up. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to get, yeah, that's 5. So there are actually 5 people on our ocean rowing boat. And this ocean rowing boat, it's 29 feet long and 6 feet wide. So I think what I'll have is I'll have you as a rower. You're just going to, sit right here on the floor, like that. You're going to be a rower too. And sit here, yeah. You're going to sit down here. Yeah, face this way. You're going to face that way, yeah. And you are going to be our scientist cook / doing everything. So you're going to sit down right here. And then you two are going to be sleeping. So you're going to be just kind of lying down right there. No, your head goes this way. Yes. Yeah, and you lay down too. Yeah. Get a little bit closer. Yeah, there you go. And so this is what it's like actually to be on an ocean rowing boat. There's not a lot of room, and you spend a lot of time in very close quarters. It's and it's incredible how quickly you adapt to being on a boat of this size, because you're rowing for most of the time, and when you're rowing in 4-hour, 2-hour, or 1-hour shifts. So you're rowing 24 hours a day. So there's always someone rowing on the oars. And as well, when you're in this, you have to deal with being in very close quarters. So picture, for example, you have to go to the bathroom. What's that like? And so, okay, thank you very much. You guys can go sit down. Give them all the hands. Thank you. And it is incredible, and it's a way to also to connect to youth in a very unique way. When we were rowing around Vancouver Island, and I've got right here some drawings and some notes that came from a grade 7 class in Saskatchewan. Now picture this, a grade 7 class in Saskatchewan. Most of them have not seen the ocean, and learning about something about Vancouver Island is fairly mind-blowing, and as well actually having a connection with some people and being able to interact with some people who are out there, it really inspires this nature of learning. And here's a note that was written by Brianna to us, and it says, "My name is Brianna. I'm a student from George Lee School in Regina, Saskatchewan. Our class has been following your posts, tweets, and blog for over a month, and we're interested in what you're doing and think it is great. When you were on your expedition, did you all get along? It looks like quite a small boat, so it must be crowded. I hope that you guys had fun and that was a great experience. Sincerely, Brianna. And it's, it was incredible to row around Vancouver Island and experience the wildlife that we saw out there and experience the challenges in nature. And I still remember to this time, and I said this last night for those of you who were at the reception, we went through the Seymour Narrows, which is one of the big challenges. They're giant whirlpools. And as we crossed through the Seymour Narrows, our boat got caught up into this whirlpool, and it kind of swung us around. And after it swung our boat around and shot us out, we heard this noise, this giant noise. And I thought at first it was a chainsaw. And turned out it was a giant sea lion. It's a giant sea lion with 20 girlfriends all hanging out together on a rock. And the sound was like, it was really loud, and it reverberated deep in my chest and the chest of my teammates when we were out there. And it really brought into that account the power of nature. And there's no way that I was going to face that sea lion, and so we definitely gave him his distance. We did get to see a lot of wildlife while we were out there, but we also got to do some research, and we were researching the salinity of the ocean for some physical oceanographers and for some marine geologists who are really interested in freshwater runoff and how it affects the salinity of the ocean. And that in turn, how does that affect the wildlife that exists within the ocean? There are giant dead zones that have no oxygen, and we have a sensor on board that's taking continuous samples of the ocean water as we row, and it's sensing dissolved oxygen content, chlorophyll content, conductivity, temperature, density, all these sorts of parameters that can be then turned into knowledge, that can be turned into a more realistic representation of what is out there. 70% of our planet is the ocean, and it's relatively, it's not explored as much as as land is, certainly. And this is a great opportunity when we do go on this adventure to actually become citizen scientists, to actually pair our love of adventure with science and actually bring some value back. And actually go into that fourth point of adventure. Remember, the 5 points of adventure. It's go with someone else, risk something new, plan for safety, learn something, right? Learn something and tell that story. And I found that there are a number of different levels of adventure out there. And the type of adventure that we encourage when we go into school programs is the second level of adventure. And that's the level of adventure that I think that we've forgotten about in our modern day society. And most of our adventure in life is really play. And I'm not saying that play is bad. In fact, I think play is absolutely incredible. But play holds with it zero risk and zero challenge. And you're in a bubble-wrapped house in a bubble-wrapped world playing on a padded cushioned playground outside. And that's what I define as play. And play is great, it's good, but we need to have some risk. You need to have bumped heads, bruised knees, and you need to learn from those mistakes because we need to activate that ventral striatum in our brain. And we need to release those learning chemicals in our brain so that we can actually remember ideas and become smarter. And as you see, adventure moves on to frontier adventure. Adventure is really getting out and challenging yourself in nature. Frontier adventure is really pushing the limits. And the reason that we chose frontier adventure, and let me just make a point that we don't want to have any misadventure along the way. And the reason why we chose frontier adventure is because it's fundamental in the field of marketing, the field of communication, and it's the idea that hyperbole sells. If I was to say, hey, I went out and I went for a row on my local lake for 30 minutes, how much attention do you think we'd be able to get, and how much attention do you think we'd be able to bring to the need, for conservation of our water resources around the world? So, in fact, we're using this idea of frontier adventure to bring people into the fold and bring people into that conservation movement and get those synapses firing. Make those connections in the brain so that people want to move forward and they want to work with us and work together to make a difference. And like I said, it is about risk, and it's about teaching the next generation about risk, because we've become so safe and so adept at predicting the future that, in fact, we're almost becoming naive about risk. People will step into situations not believing that anything can go wrong. And in fact, what's happening to the environment is really a misplaced diagnosis of risk in our society, right? We haven't assessed what the proper risk is, because if everyone really truly understood what the risks were out there, then there would be changes in policy, right? And there would be quicker movement to, to thoughts and actions and places on conservation. So, as much as we're teaching risk at an individual level, we're also teaching, we want to teach risk and risk management at that global level. And I thought I'd tell you a few stories about ocean rowing and how I really got into it. And I initially got into it when my friend Jordan Hansen introduced me to it in San Francisco. I was down there. I was for a rowing race, and Jordan came up to me and he said, "Adam, you should." I rowed across the ocean in 2006, and he told me the story where him and his teammates, they launched from New York and they were rowing to England, and 6 days in they realized that they hadn't packed enough food, and they got they got to the other side, but each of them lost about 35 pounds a person. And that adventure was appealing, but it also made me not want to row across an ocean. And it made me think that this wasn't something I wanted to do. But in the meantime, I met this man by the name of Ole, Ole Elmar. And Ole Elmar is an immigrant to Canada from Denmark. And Ole came here and he worked in Canada's north in logging camps as a chef, as a cook. And eventually became a multi-millionaire, $150+ million in his bank account. And he did this by cooking waffles. And over the course of doing this, he became quite an unhealthy person. He smokes to this day a pack and a half of cigarettes. He has a colostomy sac because of the cancer that he's created in his body. He's overweight. And he's rowed across about 3 oceans, to this point. And, and I thought to myself, if Ole can do it, I guess I can do it too. But the beauty of ocean rowing, and this concept actually inspired me from Ole, because you meet someone who has that amount of wealth, and instantly the question is like, how did you do it, right? And how did you make all that money? It's like, Adam, rowing across an ocean is a lot like making $150 million, one stroke at a time. Right? He's kind of deaf too, and so he was telling me about this, and he told me this story. He built this waffle factory. And he didn't have enough capital, and he didn't have enough resources to get it forward. And he was laying people off, and he was trying to figure out, how am I going to get the money to pay my payroll to keep this going? And he'd get really stressed out, and he'd get freaked out, and then he'd go down and he'd sweep up the bay, and he'd pile all the pallets in a neat stack, and then he'd go back into his office and he'd solve one problem. Okay, and he'd go back in his office and he'd solve another problem. He'd go in his office and he'd solve another problem. And I think that's a great lesson for us in the conservation movement, is that sometimes we get all stressed out, but all we need to do is just solve one small problem every single day. And if we have many, many small steps in the right direction, we will certainly make a difference. And a great example of this is a woman by the name of Roz Savage. And here's another inspiration. And this woman, she's rowed across every single ocean in the world, and in fact, she's launching in about 2 days from St. John's to row to England. And her goal is to land in London, England in 2012 when the Olympics are on. And whether she makes it in time is really a question of the sea and the weather. Right now she's having issues. Newfoundland has had the largest iceberg flow in the longest time. But Roz is also an example about how adventure can really transform a person, and can also transform a person into someone with an environmental conscience. And Roz was living a fairly normal life in England. She was working kind of a standard job, living in suburban England, and not really caring, not really engaged. And she went through this exercise where she had to write her eulogy, theoretically in 60 years when she died. And she wrote the eulogy with her life on the same tract as it stood, and then she wrote her eulogy as what she could imagine it to be. And she realized that she wasn't happy. So she ended up quitting her job, selling her house, leaving her husband, and rowing across oceans. And after she rowed across the first ocean, she became really engaged in the conservation movement. And to this day, she's been a great voice for making sure that our oceans stay clean and that we have responsible behaviors, to maintain, our ocean resources. And it's, again, a grand example of how adventure can inspire change and how people who adventure can inspire others. And really, that's what we're planning to do at Or Northwest when we row across the Atlantic Ocean in 2012. We'll be rowing from Liberia to Venezuela, and we will be bringing with us a message of conservation. We will be bringing that message, directly into the schools. And it's pretty incredible and it's pretty impactful, and it rang true to me even yesterday. And I think maybe I have this. Just remembering this now. I don't have it. It's in my room. So I showed up to a couple of schools yesterday that we had organized a school visit where I would tell them the story of the Olympics, and I'd tell them the story of rowing across this ocean. But leading up for the week, the teachers led the kids through a number of different exercises where they learned about the ocean ecosystems. And what blew my mind when I was there, what absolutely blew my mind, I was in Alberta. And one of the questions I asked is, what are the three oceans, right? We're in Alberta right now. What are the three oceans that Alberta flows into? You guys know? What are the three oceans that Alberta flows into? Or the ocean basins? Actually, one's an ocean, one's a gulf, and one's a bay. Shout it out if you know it. It's close. Hudson's Bay, which is close to the Atlantic, Arctic, and Gulf of Mexico. And we went through this exercise and we talked to them, and then I started asking the kids a question. I'd be wandering through with the microphone. I'd say, okay, so where do our rivers flow? Like, why is it important that we understand our rivers and where our rivers flow? And they said, well, the first kid said, does it flow to oil? And I was like, no. And then they kept on asking the question, and it was really hard for them to get the concept that the river here in Calgary, the Bow River, flows out to the ocean, and that the two are connected. And to bring that connection to that, we are connected. And like I said, at a deeper level, we all as humans and we all as living things on this planet, I believe, are connected. And to help teach that concept through adventure was very powerful. And the whole week leading up to the visit was filled with conservation messaging. The kids had created pictures of fish, and on the fish they had emotional words or words of encouragement or inspiration that they had written on how they could act to make sure that they are protecting the fish. And coming in, I was able to reinforce all those messages that had been given for the last week. And I was able to come in and say, you know what, your teachers are pretty cool. The fact that they are teaching you these things, that you are learning these things. And it actually, I firmly believe, has left a lasting impact on these kids. And when we were there, in the school we do. I taught about adventure and about that second form of adventure, that step up from play, from moving away from our bubble-wrapped society into something where we can teach risk, where we can have a little bit more adventure out there, especially for for our young boys in the world, and young boys who are like me, who really didn't thrive in a classroom where we were sitting. I needed more time outside. I needed more time moving, and I know that there are thousands and millions of boys out there who need more adventure in their classrooms on a regular basis. And we can empower them. We can empower their masculinity, and we can empower them to to go out on adventures and to be responsible, grown-up men. And I think about adventure, and I think about a woman who's very inspiring. I think about Helen Keller, and I love this saying, and I think I'll leave it at this, and then I'll open it up for some questions. And what she's saying is that life is either a challenge or it's nothing, right? You're either feeling that sense of engagement, that sense of presence, that sense of just of being driven, or it's empty. But the last sentence is really what drives it home for me, is that avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Right? Because if you go out in the world, right, we'll use this ocean row for an example and as a metaphor, in that when we go out to row across an ocean, we're not just going higgledy-piggledy across the ocean. We go out and we plan for safety. We plan for all the eventualities that will come. And in fact, it's probably safer rowing across an ocean than someone who gives zero thought to their daily life and actions, who's just wandering down the street, who might die of a heart attack, get hit by a car, or die of cancer. Right? Because adventure and challenge actually inspires a lifestyle. It inspires the healthy way. It inspires a better way of living. And that's why I believe in it. So I thought it would be good to open up for some questions, and whether it be questions from the internet or questions from the room. Yes, please.
Would you like to start? I enjoyed your talk, but did you ever consider farming to accomplish the same things?
Did I ever did I ever consider farming to accomplish the same things? It's funny because which?
It's harder.
It's what?
It's harder.
Oh, it's harder. Farming is harder. Yes. As humans, it's funny because we're inspired to do different things, and I don't see you being a farmer either, and it is interesting. Like, we all sit here and we have to do what we're built to do, and we all have individual pieces in this interconnected web that we really need to achieve, and it's really finding a way to connect them and finding a way to connect for the common good and the greater good. And I'm a firm believer that what we do will help farmers, because all the food we pack on board this boat is organic. All the food that we pack on board this boat is responsibly and ethically grown whenever possible. So it's the comment's pretty funny, but it's also it is a sense of self-reflection, because most of us aren't farmers, right? Farmers are the poorest people on the planet, especially in the in the third and the developing world. And so what can we do in our lives, and living a life that we feel is authentic to us as individuals, so that we can actually help our fellow humanity.
Adam, could you tell us a little bit more about the Robert Bateman program and some of the maybe successes or best ways you've seen of getting kids and also their parents more outdoors?
Yes, well, there's a program called the Get to Know program. It's also sponsored by the Canadian Wildlife Federation. And what the Get to Know program does is it gets kids outside and encourages them to create art. And there's a contest that's held every year. And the top submitters of art, and the art can be technology based, so it could be media, it can be movies, it can be paintings, it can be drawings, it can be music, it can be poems. And the top submitters of art actually win a prize to visit a national park and learn from a top artist. And they also get a chance to, as a national park in the United States or in Canada, and they get a chance to actually connect with nature. But the higher philosophy of the Get to Know program is to actually get kids outdoors, connecting with nature, and engaging with it and creating this art. Because again, it operates from a very similar philosophy of adventure, in that we will protect what we know and we love. Right? And it's about disseminating an idea and disseminating a philosophy through society, so that when people are voting and when people are putting their check mark behind someone when they grow up, that they are picking the person who is taking the common good in mind and keeping the good of the planet in mind.
Thank you for the very interesting talk. I come from a rather non-risk culture. So how can I encourage the young children, and to start with my little daughter, to take an adventure instead of playing?
Yeah. Well, if you come from a lower risk culture, just think of the risk pathway, right? The risk pathway goes from play, from adventure, frontier adventure, and the goal in all of that is to avoid misadventure, right? But the risks are very simple, and risks can come in having more physical awareness. The physical risks. So you could put your daughter in sport. You can put your daughter in outdoor sport. You can send your daughter to camp, where she's away from parents, she's away from her family, she's away from her comfort zone, and there's something new to try, right? And it's scary, but at the same point in time, for everybody, adventure is different. And the goal of adventure is that everyone comes out with a positive experience in the end. And it has to be, adventure has to be melded properly so that, because everybody's different. Not everybody wants to row across an ocean, right? But I'm a firm believer that we need that feeling of adventure, because our bodies are built to thrive on adventure, and our bodies are built to learn from adventure. And so, very simple ways. And I think actually, here's one thing, one of the best ways is to be more adventurous in your own life, right? And kids model their parents more than anyone else. And so if you're a very risk-averse parent, then chances are you'll have a risk-averse kid. So take risks together. Go try something new and exciting together. Go on a hike where there might be some bears, and bring someone who knows how to deal with bears along with you. That could be scary but exciting at the same time.
And how I would put this very timely, that comment, since Yasmin is the one that brought Ismail's presentation to us yesterday out of Egypt very quickly, and before they noticed that she was missing. So thank you very much, Yasmin, for modeling that for us.
Yes.
Adam, what would you say one of the things that we face doing school programs in the outdoors is I'll rephrase. Do you think are we afraid of the outdoors? Is that a fear we need to overcome? Because there could be something hiding behind something that I don't understand fully.
Yeah, well, fear is a natural reaction, right? We all have fear in our lives, but fear can be a motivator if you learn to harness it through something like adventure, but fear can also be a giant ball and chain that holds us back. So the goal of adventure is to get kids to experience fear and realize that they can push through that fear, and they can control their fear, and that they have the power, they have that internal power. And when you adventure properly, you realize the power of the human spirit, and you realize that you are more powerful than you ever had known before. And that's the gift that we want to give. And your initial question, which is, are we more scared of the outdoors? I'd say it's a yes and no, right? It's a bit of a paradox in that we know more about the outdoors, so we know all the harms that are out there, but we also know the beauties that are out there. And from my experience, what adventure is, 90% of life on a rowing boat is pretty normal. It's it just kind of feels like normal, real life. And then you've got that small sliver where you're dealing with fear. You're saying, am I going to live through this? Or you're dealing with pain, you're dealing with discomfort, that awful side of the human condition. But on the other hand, you're dealing with some of the most beautiful moments in the planet, and you're connecting with water, you're getting to know the ocean, you're getting to know what is happening on a real, visceral, physical, intense level. And so I'd say, I'm still trying to struggle to answer your question kind of as a yes or no, and I'd just say it's yes and no. We have more fear out there, but we also have the ability to overcome it, because there are so many people out there who get it. There's so many people who get the concept. So it's really, finding those people and incorporating them into your organizations, whether it's from, an outdoor leadership school or people who've been, in Girl Guides or Boy Scouts. They're people who really understand the outdoors, they understand the risks, but they understand the power, and figuring a way to harness their confidence so that, one, kids kids will have that ability to challenge themselves, but they won't, they won't put themselves, they won't kill themselves, really. That's what we want to prevent. They might hurt themselves, which is okay.
Adam, in your past 17 years prior to finishing in the Olympics, your training schedule was extremely grueling. How does this one differ as a training schedule from what you were doing as an Olympic athlete?
Yeah, well, adventure, and actually that's a really good point, Randy, and I forgot to bring that up. And the difference between adventure and why I really like adventure and why I really want to promote adventure is that anyone can adventure. And the training schedule for adventure is relatively lax compared to training for the Olympics. It's 20 minutes to an hour. Maybe you get a 2-hour workout or a 3-hour adventure on the weekend if you're really lucky. But it's really just living a healthy, active lifestyle and then preparing and planning over a couple of years to do something grand, to do something exciting. And that's really something that anyone can do. And the training schedule is really manageable. It's manageable on a hobby level, so that and that's really how how most of us on our team have been able to do that, right? Or all of us. We all have careers outside. Myself, I'm a workshop trainer and a speaker, but we've got Jordan on board, who's a writer. We've got Greg, who's a physiotherapist. We've got Rick, who's who's an aerospace engineer at Boeing. And so we've been able to do this on the sides of of our lives, and find ways to integrate them. But it's the training for an adventure is manageable, and it's really something that can be amateur, it can be from the heart, and it can be just something that you do because you love it.
Maybe, Adam, a question that will help link to where we're going with this in terms of involvement of youth in the education structure itself. In your conversations yesterday, you and your teammates, one of the things that seemed to come out was when we talk about understanding nature, in many cases, we do it very selectively under controlled conditions. We go out the optimum to go skiing when it's nicest, etc. So here you are in the middle of a washing machine. You're used to looking down and seeing that you're making 2.5, 3 knots in progress. And you may still be making it, but you're going round and round and round and round. Can you tell us how those kinds of experiences sort of take you to a different level of understanding?
Well, it's you being out in the raw power of nature really is really does affect the spirit as much as it does your cognitive understanding of what is happening, right? I guess from more of a spiritual side, it really just it helps you appreciate what the world is and how powerful it is and how insignificant us as individuals really are in the scheme of things. The purpose of going out there when the weather is horrible, it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel more alive. And I just think back to even common adventures that I have in my everyday life, which is cycling. I love cycling to work, cycling around my city, and I'll be cycling, and I'll be cycling along in the rain, and I'll look at a car, and I'll be smiling, and I'll be laughing, and I'm like, you don't know how good this feels. And then I'll find myself 2 days later, I'm driving along in my car, and I'm warm, and my heat seat, like the heater on my seat is on, right? And I'm all toasty, and windshield wipers are going. I'm looking at the biker, and it's like, oh, you poor soul, you poor soul. And that's that's the paradox, right? Being outside is enlivening, and to help us understand what happens, you do understand, physical oceanography. If you are studying it, if you're an ocean scientist, you should be on the ocean as much as possible and trying to connect it in a real way, because you stare at waves all day. You're looking at them. You're looking at the periods. You're looking at the, how tall they are, how small they are, how they vary, and where they, and how they roll in. And it's just having that understanding that transcends knowledge, or that it transcends language, helps you actually put a language or a mathematics or a science to the experience, I think, in a more effective way.
Thank you very much. Just two quick comments. One is, I'm not sure you fully understand how much some of us who won't get a chance to do this will appreciate vicariously what you're going to do. And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
The other is, I see you're leaving from Liberia, and perhaps you already know this, but the president of Liberia is one of the world's most amazing women. Her name is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and one of the things she's been very committed to doing is providing safe water and sanitation in Liberia, which for decades has been a country without much effort in that area. And I don't know if you have any connection with her or with her group that's working on that, but it might be an interesting tie to make. Well, she actually won the Nobel Peace Prize with 2 other women, I think, this year or last year.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to connect with you afterwards. Let's have a conversation.
I think I have a question that has to do with leadership and teamwork, but it's actually about also competitive rowing. I've always had a question. 8 giant guys in a boat getting yelled at by a scrawny little guy. Yeah. How does that guy live?
How's that? Well, it's funny. For those of you who don't know rowing, you have a bunch of 6'5", 220 pounds with a 120-pound guy called, it's named a coxswain, but we also call him a cox. And sometimes we say it's 8 big guys with 120-pound cocks. But from a teamwork perspective, it's really recognizing your role within a team, and everybody has a role to play. And within a rowing 8, even it's broken down into a number of different sections. You have the coxswain whose job is to communicate and to speak to everybody, to steer the boat, and to motivate and use language as his oar. But then you also have the first 2 people in the boat who set a rhythm and a pace for the boat. Then you have the next 2 people who are in charge of power in the middle of the boat. And then you have 3-seat and 4-seat who are also part of the engine room who are in charge of power, but they're the rookie section. And then you have the back seat part of the boat. They're in charge of balancing the boat, which is long, 60 feet long, 2 feet wide. And really it's really understanding, okay, this is my role on the boat, and if you do your role properly as the communicator, and I listen to you as the communicator, then we will be better as a team. And it takes a very special person to be the coxswain. Our coxswain in our past 2 Olympics is actually competing for Canada in 2012, Brian Price. And he's an incredible person. He can build rapport with anyone very quickly and very effectively. And being able to get 8 big guys with strong egos and independent wills to actually listen to one person and move together is really an accomplishment.
Yeah, but did you see the video who actually gets thrown in the water?
Yes.
Thank you, Adam, for taking the time and to share last night with the young boy, Adam. He was quite exceptionally pleased to have met with you and to seeing that multifold where you go. My question is, do you have strategy for that point from awareness to understanding to what we love is what we'll protect, so that knowledge on how to protect and going out without the awareness, do you have strategy to suggest how we can go out there and leave our place better, that natural experience, than when we found it? And to help connect with people in our community that might help that.
Yeah, well, a strategy to get out there, and a strategy, you're looking for a strategy to get out there and a strategy to disseminate the... Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you love the place, so when you don't know. We were out on a walk and we were with scientists who knew this was a rare flower in Alberta, and maybe the only one left, and people were walking around and said, well, after when somebody stepped on it, it's like, well, this was one of the places. So
yeah.
That's what I'm saying is, without awareness, that strategy, that gap, when you have it and you know how to take it away.
Well, so you're essentially asking for strategies to educate people on how to care for the planet, and really, I think it comes down to a number of different strategies. But the first one is just be an awesome person, And I think that's really the best way to influence the planet. That's the best way I've found. Try to live in as common sense and as responsible way as you can. And then that will ripple out. And then the people who come into contact with you will be inspired slowly. Change doesn't happen overnight, and when it does, it's a revolution, and a lot of people get killed. And many small steps in the right direction happens, and there's a lot of great organizations, and that's why we work with someone like Canadian Wildlife Federation, who has a strong, conservation ethos, and has been around for the last 50 years presenting that. And I think as individuals, if we want to make a difference, more than just living a difference, is getting involved in an organization that resonates with your personality, resonates with your ethos, because there are a lot of different conservation, a lot of different environmental organizations, and there's a lot of different types of people out there. And so you can find one that fits with you, and you can reach people who that organization will touch and will have the effect that it does. And there's many different ways to change behavior, right? You can legislate people, you can try and convince them, you can try to educate them. And but personally, the best way I found was just live it, and then slowly let it disseminate, osmosis.
Hi, Adam. My question is, we've heard a lot of fascinating stories from yourself, and just wondering, what's your vision for yourself? Where do you see yourself heading, and what is it that you want to achieve?
That's a difficult question. Where do I see myself heading, and what do I want to achieve? Well, I'm a firm believer that it is our job as individuals to inspire one another to become better people. And what I would like to do is I would like to meet as many people as possible and be inspired from them, and try to package that together and reflect that out again to as many people as possible. And I think the more that we get to know each other, and the more that we sit around larger and larger circle tables, the more that we get to the right conclusion, and the more that we make better decisions for our local communities, for our families, for our countries, and for our world, and for our environment, and for what we see. So the vision I have for the future for myself is really to meet more people and to condense that knowledge in a way that I can again reflect that knowledge that people have given me out to more people, and hopefully act as a catalyst for change. Are we done? So
No, Adam, you're not done. You will not be done. First of all, I'd like you to join me to thank Adam for starting off our day. Like we say, starting. Yeah. The first thing, because I know his wife Rebecca would never forget, make sure Adam brings his medal back.
Yes.
We'll make sure you have that one. But thank you on behalf of everyone here.
Thank you very much.
And Adam asked a question. He said, am I done? You'll notice that we have some leading scientists and world leaders in the water world that have been here since the very beginning and are continuing on through. We're hoping that throughout this day, the inspiration that you've shared with people right now, online and here, is going to continue, because you've defined exactly what this has been all about. Is if we each play our roles, the contributions we bring as scientists, as policymakers, as educators, as the public that are engaged in this, then we can be successful. So even though we'll take a 10-minute break, we're going to resume, and we're going to put Adam out here in the audience with you, and we'll continue our dialogue. Thanks again, Adam.
Yeah.
Greatly
Thank you,
appreciate it. So for those that are online with us, you can head for the fridge, you can finish off your breakfast, and for the rest of the people here, there should be something outside the door supplied for you. See you in a little bit. That was excellent.